Welcome to Midweek Murders, where we take a look at true crime around Australia. In today's episode, we look at a triple murder that was inspired by a mystery plot. This is about the Murchison murders, and about an author named Arthur Upfield and the man that called himself Snowy Rowles. Arthur Upfield was on the search for a mystery plot for his next novel, The Sands of Windy. He wanted his detective, affectionately known as Boney, to have a case where there was no body present. After mentioning his problem with a colleague, George Ritchie, Mr. Ritchie came up with a disposal method. Burn the body along with that of a large animal, sift through the remains to remove any metal or other fragments, dissolve the metal in acid, and pound remaining bone fragments to dust and discard it with the wind. It was a great disposal method. There was one problem. It was too good. Boney was unable to detect or prove murder with that method, so Mr. Upfield offered £1 to Mr. Ritchie if he could find a flaw in that method. Mr. Ritchie was unable to do so. The plot of the novel hinged on this point, and Mr. Ritchie met Snowy Rowles, whom Mr. Upfield also knew. Mr. Ritchie mentioned the problem, and soon all of Mr. Upfield's friends and acquaintances were all familiar with the difficulties of the plot. On the 5th of October, Mr. Upfield, along with several others that worked at Camel Station, had another discussion about the plot. This discussion would later be used as evidence in the court case against Rowles. In December of 1929, Rowles was seen in the company of two men, James Ryan and George Lloyd. On December 8, Rowles, Ryan and Lloyd left Camel Station. Christmas Eve 1929, Mr. Upfield bumped into Rowles again, who claimed that Mr. Ryan had stayed in Mount Magnet and lent him his truck, though Rowles told someone else that Mr. Ryan had sold him his truck for £80. Lewis Carron, a New Zealand native, had arrived in the Murchison area in 1929 as he had found employment at wiki Station. In May of 1930, Mr. Carron left his employment in the company of Rowles. Mr. Carron kept regular correspondence with his friends, and was for that reason that his disappearance was noticed. It was not until the police began investigating Mr. Carron that they realised that Mr. Ryan and Mr. Lloyd were also missing. The detectives soon became aware of the murder plot of Mr. Upfield's novel and found Mr. Carron's remains in the 183-mile, or 295-kilometre, hut on the rabbit-proof fence. Among other items were a wedding band that would be positively identified as Mr. Carron's by a New Zealand jeweller and the victim's wife. Rowles was only charged for the murder of Lewis Carron. With the disappearances of Mr. Ryan and Mr. Lloyd, Rowles had followed Mr. Upfield's method of disposal, leaving a total lack of physical evidence that could be used in court. With the death of Mr. Carron, Rowles had omitted one of the crucial steps, the destruction of metal remains in acid. On his job in Australia, Mr. Carron had assumed the name Lewis Carron, as he was previously known as Leslie George Brown. His wife, Mrs. Brown, had gone to a jeweller in Auckland to have his wedding ring recut. The jeweller's assistant had accidentally used 9-carat gold to rejoin the 18-carat ring. The result was a distinctive mark of the recoloured solder joint, which made the ring unique and identified as Mr. Brown's. As a side note, this ring was later used in one of Mr. Upfield's other novels, The New Shoe. With no evidence of Mr. Ryan and Mr. Lloyd, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours before coming back with a verdict of guilty for the death of Mr. Brown on March 19, 1932. Rowles claimed that he was convicted of a crime that never took place and tried to appeal his conviction, which was rejected. On the dewy morning of June 13, 1932, Rowles was hanged in Fremantle Prison. Mr. Upfield completed the novel that used the murder method, titled The Sands of Windy. He would later write a book titled The Murchison Murders, writing about Snowy Rowles and the murders he committed. Thanks to a friend's incredible disposal method, Arthur Upfield was able to get the story he needed, and another from the same case. While it led to something so horrible, as Rowles never gave a reason for why he committed the murders, something came from the misery, as Mr. Upfield went on to become one of Australia's best mystery authors. Thanks for listening to Midweek Murders. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Links will be in the description below if you wish to learn a little more about this. Until next week, stay safe.